All right, so working on the cylinder heads and getting the valves put back in. So we have figured out the compression ratio. We know what we need to do as far as putting the cylinders on. We're not going to have to use any gaskets or shims. We're just going to put Permatex on it and put it in. We'll be good. And in order for the cylinder heads to go on, we have to put the valves in. Now, we've already seated or lapped the valves. These are your valves. As you can see here, we had to buy new exhaust valves on both of them. These are the original intake valves. And what you do, as I mentioned before, as far as seating them or lapping the valves is what they're called, you've got some grinding compound that you use, and we've got some old stuff right here. It's just it looks like a bunch of goop that you put on the edge, the inside edge of the valve, and you also put it on the inside edge of the head. And then you take the valve and you just push it down through your the hole that's there. Push it down. And then you take something like this. As you can see, it's flexible. It's basically almost like a plunger. You stick this right there and push it in, and it'll create suction and grab onto it. And then you can either do it by hand, or you can use a drill. You can put it on the end of a drill like we chose to do. That's a homemade way. They've got better versions of it, but it worked for us. And it took quite a bit to get some of these valves to really, the seats to really look the way they needed to. But you just work on it, continue to do it, add some grinding compound. You kind of spin it, lift off, push back, spin it, lift off, so that the grinding compound finds a new place to get into. And the goal is to make both the valves and the seats, is what they're called, the seats inside the head there where it sits down. You want both of those to be real shiny. And you can't mix these up, because what you've done is you've basically matched the valve to that seat there. So if you did that one and then laid it out, and then did that one and laid it out and somehow mixed them up, that wouldn't be good. You don't want that. So we did that. We lapped all the valves, got them seated, and then we had to put them, install them. So you push them through, and then they come through, and they're on the other end. This is the end of it, so you can see that little kind of like a button there. And then you've got your springs, which when they're not compressed, they're about that long. And then you've got a cap that goes down in it. And then inside of it, you've got these little like pin. They're about this wide, and they're cut in half. So you've got two halves. One kind of fits on this side, and then one fits on that side. What you have to do is you compress the spring with the cap down until you see the valve stem, and that valve stem you'll see 3 lines in it, and those little clips go on either side. And we just made a homemade guy. Our spring compressor that we had here just was not doing the job. And so we did a homemade guy here where we just kind of took a piece of steel, cut a kind of a groove in it so we could see in. And this does spin on the end. And then basically you just put this around it, put that on the top of the cap there, start tightening down, and when you do, that stem will come up into this area where you can see those 3 grooves. Then what we did is we took those little clip kind of guys, put some lube into it so that it would stick to the stem. That's key. You want something to make it stick, because you have to take those things, and the first one that you put in, the way that we did it, we just used a magnet like this, as well as a screwdriver. And you basically take it and you stick it in like this, and then use the screwdriver to hold it, and then pull your magnet off. And then that lube causes it to kind of stick to that metal, and then you have to push that around to kind of towards the back side. I'm sure that there are better spring compressors where you can see both and you can just stick them at the same time, but that's all we had. So, but you do that for each one, and as you can see, they're on, and you just got to be real careful as you come off with it. You want to make sure that those 2 little clips actually do sit, come together on it, because that's what's holding all this together. And so that is installing the valves, the valve springs. And now our next step is going to be to go ahead and put Permatex on our cylinders, put them on with the pistons. Once we get that on, we'll be able to put our cylinder heads on, and then we'll be pretty close. So we got to put our push rod tubes going here, and as you can see, that's what we've got here. Got to do a little bit of touch up on these guys, but those are your push rod tubes that end up going like that, and coming into, as you can see right here, into the back of your cylinder heads there. So that's what we got going on here. If you got any questions, leave a comment.